Welcome to the Business of Apparel Podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street. I can't wait to share this episode with you. Hello, and welcome back to the Business of Apparel Podcast. We are going to be airing this episode the day after Thanksgiving in 2023. And so in light of the topic that I wanted to talk about today, I want to kind of open up first and talk about gratitude and thankfulness. Yesterday was a big day. I love Thanksgiving. It's one of my favorite holidays. And I think the reason being is because thankfulness for me and gratitude is something that has just been such a big part of my life. And after starting my entrepreneurial adventure, starting Unmarked Street and the Business of Apparel, I think I really started to understand how gratitude can be a life changer. And while it's always been something that's been important to me and it's been big in my family and, big in my heart, I wanted to just quickly speak about the advantages of having a gratitude practice and how it's changed things for me. And I know a lot of people kind of talk about gratitude practices and they don't always come across as something that is less than woo-woo, right? We talk about woo-woo kind of being like this energy that certain people have that makes them zestful for life or makes them kind of over exaggerated in their emotions about something. But I think the realization of what woo-woo really is an appreciation of the positive things in life and excitement around doing something that's wonderful in your life. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so in light of that, I just wanted to kind of give you my advice and thought on a gratitude practice and also help you understand why it's talked about so much out in the world of being a small business owner, or if you are not in this world, maybe you haven't heard about this a ton, but I'd love to just share my thought here. So I want to say probably 3 or 4 years ago, I started listening to Miss Rachel Hollis quite a bit. I read all of her books. I was listening to her books over and over again in my car. I've probably listened to Girl Stop Apologizing 3 or 4, maybe 5 times. It's just something that I tend to come back to. I really like kind of her vibe and the way that she teaches and a lot of the advice that she gives. And so when I started listening to Rachel Hollis, one of the things she talked about was a gratitude practice. And she had these Start Today journals. And so I purchased one and ended up starting to fill out these Start Today pages, which was basically 2 different parts. So the bottom portion of the page is 10 goals that you made happen in 10 years. So if you were looking back on your life today, 10 years from now, what are the 10 amazing dreams that you made happen? And so it helps you kind of visualize what your life might look like 10 years from now. 10 years is a long time. And so if you can really imagine big and start to visualize what that could look like for yourself, how do you put that on paper and then start to make that part of your daily routine so that you're constantly thinking about those big goals and striving toward them and knowing what you're working toward? So that was part 1. Part 2, though, was at the top of the page, there are 5 lines on there for 5 things you were grateful for today. And at first, this kind of can be a difficult practice. I found it to be a difficult practice, especially because I was in a really bad place. Many of you know I was severely burnt out working at corporate in my last couple of years there. I was going through therapy, trying to just get from week to week or from day to day or from meeting to meeting. And so going through a gratitude practice and really trying to figure out, what was I grateful for today, at first started to be a little bit of a challenge. And it's not supposed to be necessarily, I'm grateful for my family, which of course we all are. We're grateful for our families. We're grateful for our homes. We're grateful for a lot of the big things that happen in our life. And there's a place for gratitude there. But this was meant to be more like, I'm grateful that I got to see that laughing girl walking her puppy because it really made me smile. Or I'm grateful that I walked past this lavender bush and it just smelled so amazing today. And so what that tends to do when you start a gratitude practice like that is it starts your mind into starting to notice those types of things in your day to day. So when you go for a walk, you're looking for things to be grateful for because you know at the end of the day, you need to be able to fill out this list. And so you're kind of like, ooh, what can I put on the list? Is there anything I could be grateful for on this walk? And that sounds a little cheesy and it sounds a little ridiculous, but what it starts to do is change your mindset, where all of a sudden you're not going for a walk and thinking about all of the crappy things that have happened so far all day. And you need to get away, you need to go for a walk, you need to get out of the building. All of a sudden, you're starting to look for things that make you smile, and you're starting to look for things that bring you just a little bit of joy. And that really, really seeps into your life. So the purpose of a gratitude practice is not to be cheesy or not to be kind of over exuberant about life, but it's to start building in the practice of looking for small moments of happiness in your life, so that those small moments become a lot more constant and you start to see a lot more of them. Because when you do start to see more joyous moments in your life, it really becomes a more joyous life. And so I wanted to speak about that today in the light of this Thanksgiving weekend. And so I hope you all had an amazing holiday yesterday. And if you're interested in starting a gratitude practice and you have any questions for me, you can always comment on this podcast episode, or you can reach out to me at unmarkedstreet.com. And I'd love to hear from you on that. So the reason I wanted to touch a little bit on gratitude today before I got into my podcast topic is because of kind of what I feel like is maybe an opposite word, which is regret. And I'm the type of person who rarely has regrets. I probably have a couple in my life of things that, I really wish I hadn't done that. That's something that, didn't really serve me. But all of those scenarios I can look back on now and also realize how it propelled me into a better place in my life. So if I got myself into a bad relationship and I really learned some stuff about myself and the kind of person that maybe I didn't want to be as I grew into my womanhood and grew into being the adult that I am today, those kinds of relationships, I could look back on them and I could regret them. But at the same time, I was able to get maybe something out of my system or try something that didn't fit for me and know for the rest of my life, that's not something I want to be, or that's not something I ever want to do again. And so it ends up being a really big lesson. And if you can look at situations and failures and missteps as a way to learn and move forward in your life in a way that is better for you, I think the word regret almost doesn't exist. And so in that vein, I kind of want to talk today a little bit about the few things that I would have done much differently if I were starting my business today. If I could look back on the beginning of Unmarked Street and know what I know today about all of the things about starting a small business, being an entrepreneur, and go back and change some things, I have 3 very top things that I would probably redo or do differently. And then I also have just one big topic that I would really focus in on, which is interesting because the thing is focus. A little bit of a spoiler there. So I want to talk through those things today. And I want to give you a perspective of, I heard a lot of this advice when I was starting my business. And I didn't listen to a lot of people. I can be one of those people who needs to experience it themselves. I need to go through the hardship. I need to go through the lessons learned. I need to make my own mistakes to be able to come out on the other side and say, okay, now I really understand this. And I want to give you that perspective because if you're like me and you're the type of person who really needs to experience it themselves, I want you to know that there are some things that just do not change for anybody. I am probably one of the most ambitious, tenacious, hardworking people that you might ever meet. I have really big dreams. I have really big goals. When I met with the infamous Rich Keller, who does Your One Word, his one word for me was tenacity. I will go at something until I make it work if I want it to work. And I will tell you that there are some things that as hard as I worked at them, I couldn't even make them start to work because I wasn't taking the advice of all of the different people around me. and I wasn't listening to a lot of the good information that was out there. So a few of the initial mistakes that I made. Some of you might know that in the end of 2022, I actually went and got my real estate license. So I think it was April of 2022. The business was just starting to pick up. I was starting to get a lot of great contracts. We were working with some amazing clients. I was starting to hire the first few people to come on to Unmarked Street, building it out into the agency that it is today. I was no longer able to just continue being a solo entrepreneur. We had too many hours basically on the books. And so I needed to be able to help my clients get their work done by hiring more people and helping me get the actual work done. So I was hiring, and at the same time, there was something in my mind that was like very, very fearful. There was something about the kind of money that we were making, the kind of clients that we were bringing in. It was all almost too good to be true. The fact that I could be hiring, only 6 months into starting my business and be at that place already was kind of unheard of in the circles that I was in at the time. And it scared me. I really had this notion of this won't last, and I need to have a backup when this all fails. And when I look back on that now, it's really interesting because I think a lot of the hardship we've had in this last year at Unmarked Street, gaining more clients and growing our revenue, is because I was fearful. And because I had that mentality about the clients and I had that mentality about the money. And I went and did something that completely disrupted the momentum that we were making. So I started taking real estate classes to get my California real estate license in April of 2022. And it took me quite a while to get through the classes because we were so busy doing client work. It took me, I think, about 6 months to make it through the classes. I was talking to a Keller Williams office at the time who kind of helped sponsor me. They bought some of my books for me. And that was a wonderful segue into working with Keller Williams. And so in November of 2022, I sat for my real estate exam and passed. And so all of a sudden I became a licensed real estate agent in the state of California. Now, what Keller Williams does is this amazing, amazing coaching program where instead of just throwing you right to the wolves, they put you in these programs where you can learn all of the amazing things about being a real estate agent. How do you sell? How do you lead generate? How do you market yourself? How do you show homes? How do you write contracts? All of that was built into this coaching program, but it was taking up a lot of my time. We were having to go through sometimes these in-person sessions, and they were 3 days a week, all day long. So for the month of January in 2023, I was actually in real estate seminars for 3 days a week, every week, and it was an all-day event during those days. And so I was completely taken away from Unmarked Street. The business of apparel wasn't even really a thing yet. I had this idea for the podcast and I had really wanted to start a course, but I hadn't had any time to really put any plans around any of those things. And I think it was after the end of January, because that same month, we saw a lot of layoffs in the apparel industry and our business really suffered. And I will raise my hand to be the first to say, I was distracted. I probably wasn't really paying attention to what was happening in the apparel industry because I was off over here doing this real estate thing because I was afraid that my apparel contracting business wasn't going to work. And so that fear really led me down a path that split my time. It split all of my effort. The team was doing great. All of our clients continued to be served well. I was really, really proud of how we were handling all of that, but it wasn't my focus the way that it should have been. And so I ended up having to take a step back from real estate in February. And just this last month, in October of 2023, I officially contacted Keller Williams and said, I'm not going to pursue this at all anymore. So please just take me off of your list. There are some fees that you have to pay as a real estate agent to be able to access the MLS and to be able to give referrals and be part of a system. And so I recently just backed out of all of that and said, I am 100% in on Unmarked Street in the business of apparel now. I feel confident, and I know that if I just dedicate my time and effort into my main business here, that I am going to be able to succeed at it, because that's what I do, right? I succeed. And so I am going to no longer be talking anything about real estate. I will just flat out say, like, I barely learned anything. I went through all of those coaching programs. I have like the mental knowledge of what you're supposed to do as a real estate agent, and I understand contracts in general, but I was not able to actually do any of that work because I didn't have the time, and I wasn't able to actually execute any contracts. I didn't have any clients in the real estate realm. So that is now over. I am walking away from that. My real estate business, which was called Great Places Properties, is going to be shut down in 2024. We are currently going through and making sure that all of our, like, as you shut down a business, you kind of need to check a bunch of different boxes, make sure you're out of all of the different subscriptions, make sure that any of the social media that I've set up is kind of cleaned up properly. And so we're going through those processes now. So that was the first huge mistake that I made. I really let myself be consumed by fear and by the unknowing and by not really believing in myself that I could make Unmarked Street work. The second thing that I would probably do quite differently is along the same lines. 2022, again, was a great year for Unmarked Street. We had pretty decent profits, and those profits allowed me to create my own apparel line. I had this dream since I was a little girl of having my own fashion line. And so I wanted to come out with a travel apparel line because my travel experience is vast in the business world. I've been traveling for business for a very long time. And as I was traveling for work, I always ended up having this same travel uniform. I always wore the exact same clothes on the days that I flew. I actually have the exact same outfit, just in 2 different colors. I wear one on the day that I fly there. I wear the other on the day that I fly home. And it is just exactly what I know how to put on. It's what keeps me comfortable. It's what keeps me warm. It's what keeps me cool. It's what keeps me going on the days where I am on a plane for potentially up to 15 hours, which can be tough. But if you're wearing the right clothes, it actually can be quite a bit easier. So I wanted to offer that to the travel community, specifically professional women who travel for business. That was me. That was where my heart was. I wanted to be able to give these tools to these women who sometimes are asked to get on a plane, 24 hours before they have to fly. And it's not always easy to figure out how to pack a bag or figure out what you're wearing the next day if you don't have these things set up. So I went out, and with my performance apparel background, I really wanted to create a highly technical, innovative product. And so what I did is I worked with one of my friends out of Italy. We have friends in the Lake Como area who own a weaving mill, and their fabrics are some of the highest quality I have ever seen in the industry. Their weaving techniques are just beautiful. And they were starting a new technology. Their R&D situation is outstanding. They do so many amazing things when it comes to performance apparel, offering fabric solutions for cycling, running, triathlon. And one thing that they were starting to get into was the use of silver yarns. And silver yarns are meant to block EMF radiation from getting into your body. So if you are wearing a garment that has silver yarns incorporated in it in the right way, it will block EMF radiation from basically getting to your organs. And what that does is it helps to regulate your heart rate, which reduces anxiety and it reduces stress. So on days when you're traveling, if you're wearing the base layer kit that I actually created, you see a lot of travel anxiety reduced. You see a lot of stress reduced. That EMF radiation blocking also helps when you're going through security and you have to walk through all of those different EMF machines. And so this to me was a fantastic solution as the first couple of pieces to put into my travel apparel line. I wanted to take what I had kind of been talking about at Unmarked Street, starting small, growing slow, and just take these first 2 pieces, both of them are in black with the silver yarns, and be able to offer them and allow them to create a profit for me before I actually ended up developing or designing any additional pieces. And while this has been a wonderful learning experience for me, because being an apparel startup is something I honestly knew nothing about before doing this. I came from the corporate world. I have been following corporate processes and understanding how big brands, billion-dollar brands work, understanding how startups have to function and how funding works and how starting from scratch and starting sales from scratch, starting marketing from scratch. I didn't know any of that. And so by starting RTQ Apparel, I learned a ton about that, which is giving me a lot of new knowledge in Unmarked Street and the business of apparel to be able to bring what I've learned to the table and be able to service those clients much, much better. But I really do think that, again, I was pulling my focus away from Unmarked Street and the business of apparel to start RTQ Apparel. Now, at the end of the day, I have been making product for 20 years, and the product making process was not very time consuming for me. I will just say I'm the type of person, you could wake me up at 2 a.m. and ask me to go create a tech pack or run a fitting, and I could do it. Like I could do it half asleep because I've been doing it for so long and because I love it and I have passion for it. And it's in my blood. It's what I know how to do. I could do it at any time of any day and give you good results because of the love that I have for the work that I do. And so when it came to that portion of building RTQ Apparel, it actually went super smoothly. I had zero issues with development. The production went super smoothly. And so I ended up with this inventory. But I am going to 100% admit, when it comes to marketing and sales, I have some work to do. I have some more learning on my plate there. And so that part has been slow. And I wish I would have maybe waited a little bit to start my own travel apparel line at a point where maybe Unmarked Street was a little bit more established. And I really had the time to focus in on how to build the sales and the marketing that I really need to get RTQ Apparel going. So not that that's a regret, again, because I learned so much going through the process and because it was a little bit of a dream come true to be able to build this apparel line. If I could go back today, I would wait on doing that process. I would actually take those profits maybe and hire another person for the team. I think that would have been a much better use of my money there. And the third thing I want to talk about today is tricky because I've talked about coaching a lot. One of the first things that I did when I went out and started my own business was find a business coach. And I have always been willing to take a leap of faith that the money I spent on coaching was going to reap the same amount of rewards back into my business. I actually think that's true. I do think that the coaching that I've spent money on for the last 2.5 years has 100% been realized. Like every penny that I spent on coaching, I see the value in that. I see absolutely where that money went. And I think I got all of the value that I was expecting out of it. But I did stretch myself into some coaching programs that were maybe a little bit outside of my budget in hopes of being able to elevate the brand faster or being able to move the needle forward in a way that a lot of other brands couldn't because I had access to these amazing coaching programs. But at the end of the day, I really think there's just an element, again, I keep talking about this, of starting slow, and I needed to heed my own advice there. And as much as I wanted to move faster by getting access to the right information and the right type of coaches and the right type of mastermind groups and being in the room with these amazing, amazing women who I hope and know will continue to be my friends for the rest of my life, it was also just a big stretch of my budget to be in those rooms as often as I was and to sign up for some of the programs that I did. And so this one is a tough one. It's really not a regret because, again, I know I've learned a lot. I know I have moved faster probably than I would have without these coaches in these groups. But at the same time, I have yet to realize a profit in 2023 because of the amount of money that I spent getting help and getting guidance and being kind of in these accountability groups. And so 2024 is going to look quite a bit different for Unmarked Street. The one big overarching thing that I just want to relay here is the advice that you are given when you start any endeavor really is to focus on one goal at a time. And Rachel Hollis was telling me this way back before I even thought about starting my own business. She was planting these ideas in my head and I didn't listen to her. And then I started my coaching with the Kelly Roach Unstoppable Entrepreneur Program. And they told me the same thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this happen. I can figure out how to do real estate. I can figure out how to start my own apparel brand. I can do all of these extra things while growing Unmarked Street and eventually getting to build out the business of apparel as well. And I was just really naive. And even for someone who is willing to put in the time and willing to figure out how to make it work and willing to hire the people to help make sure client work does not fall off and continues to be at the highest level, even as someone like that, I still wish I would have heeded that advice much more than I did. I believe that if I had stayed focused on Unmarked Street and the business of apparel for these last 2 years, instead of splitting my time in so many different areas, it would be a lot farther along than it is today. Even though a lot of what I did was in hopes of moving the needle faster, it ended up being the complete opposite. So if you are someone out there who is just as ambitious, just as tenacious, and you feel like you can do it all, like kudos to you. I'm in the boat with you. Like we believe in ourselves. We know that, there is an element of hard work that can be applied to achieving some amazing goals. But I can now say, looking back on the last 2 years with confidence, that if you cannot choose a single goal to focus on, and you cannot figure out this one North Star that you want to make happen first, you will actually steer the boat in the wrong direction. And that is 100% what I feel like I have been doing. So 2024 is going to be hyper-focused on what we are trying to accomplish at Unmarked Street and the business of apparel, period. We are committed to our clients. We are committed to you, this community, making sure that we deliver our podcast episodes every single week. That is definitely something that takes a lot of work. And I love doing this. The podcast is 100% my heart right now. It is such a passion of mine. I love reaching out to you and being able to teach you what I know through this platform. And I love being able to meet new people and interview them about their experience in the apparel industry. But this is something that I need to keep up. And it's easy to keep up because I do love it so much. But at the same time, if I continue to split my efforts across so many different projects, I'm afraid that something like this that I love will start to decrease in quality or decrease in time. And I don't want that. So that is something that we are going to focus a ton on. You may or may not know, you may have heard me speak a little bit about my new course coming out. Being able to focus on the course and its content, getting it ready to deliver to you in February of 2024 has been a ton of work. You should see this spreadsheet that I have of all of the different tasks that I need to complete before we can get to launch day. Like it is a kind of a monster task per day through January. We are working really, really hard to make sure that we deliver the best possible course to you right up front. And so that has taken a lot of effort. And if I were still trying to do real estate, or if I were still trying to work on sales or marketing for RTQ apparel as much as I used to, I would not be able to launch in February. So this is something really crucial that I have learned and something that I am now applying to what I'm trying to do. So Unmarked Street and the business of apparel are basically going to stand on 3 pillars as we move into 2024, which I'm really excited about. The Unmarked Street side of the business will continue to be our agency. So we will continue to service clients with done for you work. If you don't want to do technical design work, if you don't want to do development work, we are the people that you can call to come in. We basically become a team member in your brand, and we do that work for you. You no longer have to do it. If you hire someone full-time for the roles that we tend to fill with our clients, you're going to be spending upwards of the minimum that we've seen these days is really $108,000 on salary for a senior level person. In either of these roles, if you are going to hire 2 people to fill those roles, you're basically looking at $200,000. Our programs start at less than half that. So if you're looking to bring someone in who can run like we can hit the ground running. We know exactly what we're doing. We love what we do. We are actually very, very good at it. I have hired the best that I know in the industry to come work with me. If you're looking for something like that, that is going to be the pillar of Unmarked Street, our done for you client servicing agency. The second pillar that we are going to stand on is education, which is the business of apparel. We are going to be continuing this podcast. I will be continuing to do weekly blogs, vlogs, all of our social media that we put out where we're teaching tips and tricks on anything that I can for the apparel industry. And then the course is going to be coming out in February of 2024. And the course is basically revealing the secrets behind the $1 billion apparel brands. Like when I go to Google and I'm trying to search, how do I grow my apparel brand? The advice that's out there on the internet is not what's happening inside the walls of the biggest companies inside our industry. That information usually can only be found by being inside the industry for years, if not decades. And so what I'm trying to do now is reveal that information to you so that you have access to it without having to spend 5 years in the industry. I actually had a client when I was talking to her about the course. She said, when I went to start my brand, I was reaching out for advice to anybody that I knew in the apparel industry. And one bit of advice that she got was, don't start your brand yet. Go work somewhere inside the apparel industry for at least 5 years. You have to understand how it actually works inside the walls of those brands for you to be able to succeed. And I think that was probably very frustrating information for her to get. And she did not heed that advice. But then hiring someone like me who can come in and actually help her understand the correct processes and the correct ways of doing things was really important for her brand to be able to succeed and grow. And I want to be able to get that information to you without it having to be a high ticket item. So education in that sense is going to be pillar number 2. And then we are also going to really start standing on a pillar of advocacy. Advocacy mostly and first and foremost for sustainability in the apparel industry. The apparel industry is the number 2 polluter on our planet, only after the oil and gas industry. Landfills are full of clothes. We continue to throw away products that will not degrade. They will not seep into the earth. A lot of the fibers that we are using are not natural. There is no way for them to go back to the earth in a sustainable way. And so our industry really needs to make a pivot, and I want to be a part of that. So I am starting to sit in rooms and sit on Zoom meetings where we're learning about future state legislature on recycling apparel or on better sustainability practices for the industry. It does need to start inside the industry, and we also need to start figuring out how to incorporate the end consumer into what we're doing and allowing them options that are better than just throwing away their garments. So advocacy in that way is going to become super important to me. I have also been sitting on the board of advisors for the West Valley College in Saratoga, California. Their fashion program is based 100% around sustainability in our industry. They are teaching their students only how to proceed with sustainable design, sustainable development. And so that has become a big passion of mine too. I'm really excited to be a part of that. So we are going to stand as an agency, as an education platform, and we are going to go into some advocacy for sustainability. And I could not be more excited about the clarity that I have for this company now, the clarity for myself, and the knowledge that if I continue to focus on these 3 pillars and what they could bring to the world and what they could bring to this industry, I believe that we have a better chance of being successful by doing that. So my advice to you is, as I heard so many times and didn't listen to, I encourage you to listen to my advice. Focus on one goal at a time. If you are building something and you are an entrepreneur, trust me, I know we all have, I think Carrie Murphy calls it the shiny object syndrome. We always see something shiny over here and then we want to go chase after that and we want to make that happen. And it is really exciting and it's wonderful if you're making profits enough to be able to follow some of those dreams. But if you are not established yet in the first goal that you set for yourself, I really encourage you to stick with it. Something that I strive for in 2024 is actually the word boredom. which is a little bit interesting to say out loud. But the idea is basically to rinse and repeat what we've been doing, what we teach, what we know, what we can contribute to this community, continue to repeat that and send that message out over and over and over again until it almost feels boring. And then at that point, we know that we can build and expand on that message and grow the company maybe a little bit from there. But until we've gotten to that point, we are going to really hone in on that perfect message and make sure that we are doing the right things for this one single goal. If you like today's episode, I would really love to hear from you. You can comment on the episode below. Please visit us over on YouTube. Like and subscribe my channel. We are trying to grow our YouTube channel. I would really appreciate if you would hit the subscribe button. And if you're interested in downloading our apparel product development blueprint, where I walk you through my process for how to develop apparel, you can go to thebusinessofapparel.com and download it today for free. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show, and if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, unmarkedstreet.com, where I do weekly trainings through my video channel, a monthly newsletter, and offer so many resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand.